It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Angela Van Breemen. Hi, Angela. How are you?
I'm very well, and how are you doing today?
Oh, doing great. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for the invitation.
So, looking at your bio, it looks like you're a singer and a poetry writer, and now you've got a book out. What kind of music do you sing?
I sing all types of music. Basically, I was trained in opera. But I do love singing in different types of styles. And I was always in love with Celtic music, was exposed to it at a young age. And so basically, this particular album is Celtic music, and it's been inspired by beautiful traditional Celtic songs, as well as several new pieces.
Oh, okay. And now you've got a book out, and the book is called Past Life's Revenge. David Harris and Emma Jackson. Who are they?
Well, they are very interesting people. So can you imagine a story that encompasses you having had nightmares all your life? This is what's been happening to poor David Harris. And no one can help him. He sought help from all sorts of different experts, and they blame it on perhaps an issue with a childhood trauma, but it isn't that. He meets a lovely young lady by the name of Emma Jackson, who is a psychic, and she encourages him to undergo a past life regression. And what he learns is that he was murdered in his most recent past life. And because he reincarnated so quickly, he discovers the murderer is still alive. He should get closure just from the fact that he knows what happened and the source of the dream. But now that he knows the murderer is still alive and could strike again, he can't find closure until he stops him from striking again.
Wow, interesting. Where did this story come from? I was going to say, is this something that happened to you, but I kind of doubt it.
No, it didn't happen to me. But it's an idea that I've always toyed with for a very long time. When I was growing up, my parents had a lot of friends who were psychics and mediums. And so it was very common to be around the dinner table talking about reincarnation and past life regression. And I always toyed with the idea that, well, what if you were murdered in a past life? And what if you reincarnated really quickly? And what if your killer was still alive? And what if you had to seek vengeance?
You said that your parents had friends that were psychics, and when you were growing up, these people were around. What do you think about that, about psychic ability? And are you a believer?
I think it's real.
Yeah,
I think it's real. I'm not all that psychic myself, but I do feel that when we have this little niggling sensations that says, don't do that, or maybe I should do this, I think that is tapping into the etheric, and I think that is a small, limited amount of psychic ability. I have dreams, and quite often I'm shocked when they do come true. So I think we all have this to a certain extent. It's just that most of us in today's society don't really tap into that inner knowledge that I think we all have access to, but most of us ignore.
So do you think the people that have psychic ability are just able to verify that or control that we don't have control over? In other words, it's like dogs in a sense, that they can smell things that we can't, and they can hear things that we can't. Do you think it's similar to that their senses are just heightened?
I think their senses are heightened. And I think that everyone's senses could be developed to feel more and sense more, which is why when people get involved in meditation, I think that they do open themselves up more to what is around them and to be more sensitive. But I think, as I said earlier, a lot of us, we're so busy in our modern day world that we cut off those sensitivities. But yes, I think some people have more of a propensity toward that than others do.
It's interesting because just today, when I went out, I had to go shopping, and I fell down in the parking lot as I was getting out of my car, and I scraped up my knee. When I got home, my dog, who never does this before, I sat down, and he came right over and started licking on my leg where I had scraped, right? And I was like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Because it was like a sympathy lick. But it's like, how in the world did he know that I had injured myself? And it's like he knew it the second I came in the door. It was very strange.
It's remarkable. Yeah. Animals do that, though. And I think it's because they probably are more tapped into being sensitive. And let's face it, if you are really good to an animal, they just love you. So you may have been emanating something in the way of pain or not being whole the way you usually would be because you did sustain an injury. It doesn't sound too serious. I'm happy for you. But he must have sensed it. Just, they know. Aren't they the most amazing creatures? Animals are just stunning in this sensitivity that they have.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. It wasn't that serious. It was just more embarrassing because I think about, 8 people saw me, and a couple of them came over and said, oh, you all right? You all right? And it was just a stupid thing, like, tripping over my own feet kind of thing. But no, I just skinned up my knee a little bit. Anyways, well, speaking of animals, I see something on here called Procyon wildlife. Is that right?
Procyon.
Procyon.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's actually Latin for raccoon. The full name for the raccoon is Procyon lotor, but our organization that I'm with is Procyon Wildlife Rehabilitation and Education Center.
Tell us a little about it. What do you guys do there?
Oh, we do amazing work. I'm more in the administrative end. I run the website and do other administrative duties, but what we do is we take in injured and orphaned wildlife and we rehabilitate them. Sometimes they have injuries or they've just been abandoned by mama for whatever reason, usually because the mother may have been trapped and can't get back to her babies. Unfortunately, these little ones get to us, and we rehabilitate them until they are old enough to fend for themselves, and then we release them back into nature.
Oh, that's fantastic. What kind of animals? I see that you're in Ontario, so could be a whole host of different kinds of animals. What kind do you get?
There is quite
generally?
A range. Yeah, we are mostly located in southern Ontario, so we don't have some of the northern animals that you might see, like moose, for example, or bear. But we pretty much have everything else. So it would be raccoons, obviously, which is where we started. Red squirrels, the eastern gray squirrel, which can come in either black or gray, but the technical term is eastern gray. We have chipmunks, obviously, those sweet little darlings. We have fox, we have coyote, we have mink sometimes. We have 3 weasels at the moment, all babies. And when they came to us, their eyes were closed with no fur.
Oh.
So those are just extraordinary little animals. And that covers it. Garter snakes, other kinds of snakes. We take care of all of it. Turtles, we will help, but then we will usually transfer them over to a turtle hospital, which is located in Peterborough, and that organization specifically takes care of turtles. We have opossums. Let me think what else. I think that pretty much covers the range. We do cover some birds, and we are actually working on building an aviary so that we can take in more birds. To start this program, we now have 2 residents, which will be permanent residents. They can never be released. And one is named Edgar, the Raven, after Edgar Allan Poe. And the other one is named Rusty, the Red-tailed Hawk. And they are our ambassadors. So that's part of the educational component of our organization. The rest of the animals are not available to for the public because they are meant to be released back to the wild, so we don't want them to be habituated toward human beings.
Well, that makes sense. Let me pivot back to your book for a second. You said that the particular story was something that you had in your mind for a long time. Why did you decide to write it now? Was there something that happened that inspired you to sort of get this story out?
Actually, there is. There's a couple of things that happened. The first thing is, I should preface, I pretty much consider myself a poet first. That's how I viewed myself for many years. But I dabbled with this manuscript when I was in my mid-20s. And life got busy. I met my husband, and his name's Peter Ponsa. You interviewed him last year, actually.
I remember that name.
For Outfox, his book Outfox. And the reason I mention that is he wrote his book last year, or completed it, and I had this unfinished manuscript, and I had it in the drawer, and every year or so I would look at it and I think, nah. But last time, I guess in December of 2022, I pulled it out of the drawer and I thought to myself, well, why don't you at least read it? Why don't you look at it instead of just dismissing it? And I started to read it and I thought, well, I changed a lot of it, but I like the premise of this story. Why don't you try and write it? And I think that partly it was Peter was inspiration because he just completed his book. And I thought, I'm going to do this. I can do this. So I started writing, and quite soon, the first part was already kind of laid out for me because I had a bit of a template from what I'd written years ago, but I modernized it. And I changed a lot of the wording, which, words you just don't use 30, 40 years ago anymore. And then I thought, now what do? I'm the third way in, and I didn't have any more plot. I said, well, Angela, sit down and give yourself some time to think of a plot. So I plotted out the rest of the story, was satisfied with how the story would work and end, and I started writing. And I just couldn't stop. And so by the end of early June, I had actually finished the manuscript. And I thought, now I'm going to give myself a cooling off period, which most people suggest that you should do, so that you can look at it again with fresh eyes. And the timing was perfect because I was scheduled to go into the studio to work on my album. So it sort of worked nicely in tandem. So last year, the first of the half of the year, besides doing the duties, which are significant for Procyon, was working on my book, working on our country property. And then the second part of the year was the album. So it was really nice to be able to work on such terrific projects, and it was really thrilling.
So is there going to be a part 2 to this? Is this the start of a series, or is this just going to be a one-off?
No, it is a series. I realized pretty soon as I was writing the first one that there's so much to tell. I don't want to give away the story, but David does get some resolution in finding that killer with Emma's help. And they are so happy with the success that they've had, they realized that they could probably help out with some cold cases of murders that were never solved by using the paranormal. And so that's the setting for the second book. They're sort of going to be working in tandem with the local police department and helping with cold cases to see if there's closure that they can provide for family members, and maybe closure for restless souls who can never find peace because they were murdered.
Well, I think we'll leave it at that. That seems like a good place right there. Has the book been released?
Not yet. Mickey Mickelson is our publicist for both Peter and myself, and it was his suggestion. He said, give it a release date in advance. So the book's been finished for several months now, but it will actually be released on July 9th. You can go to all the major online stores, but Amazon is probably one of the easiest ones, and you can already pre-order it. But July 9th will be the official release date.
Okay. Well, last question. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
I sure do. I have two websites, actually. The first one is focusing on my music, and that is wildsongbird.ca. And the second one is my name, angelavanbreemen.ca.
Okay. Well, I think on that, we're going to wind it down. Thank you so much for coming on this show. It was nice meeting you and talking to you. Best of luck with the book
my
release.
Pleasure.
Hope it does well.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure speaking with you today.